Haven. Hello, and how are you?
Doing fantastic, Sarah. How are you?
I am doing very well, and I am so excited that we get to dive in and chat today because I personally know all of the amazing things that you've accomplished in your athletic career, but also now what you're doing. So tell everybody what you've been up to lately.
You know, it's been a blessing. It's been humbling, a wild ride for all of us the last 14 months.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm embarking on my 17th year in college athletics, which is I don't know, hard to say given the fact I've got two sons that are 4 and 2, and you can't see the gray hairs. I'm not gonna say it's because of my two sons, but that may have added a few more. But it has been it's been a great journey. I say all that jokingly, but it's been a great journey to work in college athletics. Many facets of it. It is what I consider to be one of the greatest professions in the world.
Yeah.
I really love the space I'm in. You know, the best part of the day-to-day of the profession is the lives that I get to impact on the daily on yourself. So, young people come in with so many aspirations, so many dreams, so many goals. And it's our job to help steer them in a direction where they're going to be happy at the end of the collegiate experience. And that's what I love the most. So from fundraising to administration to internal, external roles, currently sitting as the deputy athletic director at Ball State. And it's been, again, a heck of a journey. Starting at Auburn, my alma mater, having a chance to work there, I think set the tone. I'm forever grateful to David Housel, Jay Jacobs, Keith Hargrave, Coach Joe Witt. I have to throw in Terry Boughton and Tommy Tuberville because they were my coaches. Troy Smith, he was amazing. He was like a father figure in a lot of ways. And there's so many others that I can mention. Chet Williams, so many of my teammates. I won't mention one because I'll miss
You'll miss some of them, right?
And so I'm very humble that God has given me this platform to be able to affect change in a very positive way in the lives of young people, but also having a chance to work with so many great professionals. It's been phenomenal.
Oh, and you mentioned just a little tidbit about that of what you've been through, and your journey in college athletics started in Auburn as you became, a collegiate football athlete there. So how did that really transpire for you, and how did you end up at Auburn? Because you're not from Alabama.
Yeah, I'm from that tiny city in the state of Florida called Miami.
Right.
It's interesting because I was heavily recruited by Florida State. I thought I would stay home. Was to leave the state, didn't want to get too far away. I credit my mom for all of it. Grew up in a single parent home, first generation college student. At that time, that was the goal to basically break that barrier. And so didn't want to get too far away. She kept saying to me, you've got to take this experience and run with it. Don't just take this visit or that visit, travel across the country. So I thought I'd give a shot at it with Kentucky. I thought I'd check out Purdue, Michigan. Obviously I took some unofficial visits, went over to Georgia because my father was living in Atlanta at the time. I had a chance to see a lot of different places, but ultimately the SEC, the chance to play in the best football conference there is even today, weighed on me heavily. And now obviously the visit that I had with some of the guys that were actually from South Florida, the really talented football players, was just a good opportunity. And I chose Auburn. And it was a culture shock coming from Miami, Florida, Alabama. But the thing that I love more than anything else was the people. Was that people were warm and very, very hospitable. And that made the transition even easier. And they love their Auburn football student athletes. So that also helped.
Yes. And, most of our listeners know I live in Auburn currently now, but, I don't think I really talk about my time at Auburn. And I was kind of going back, and we actually crossed paths multiple times. I was actually at Auburn when you were finishing your, when you had that GA position. And then years later, we cross paths again at University of South Alabama. And I think about all the things that like transpire for student athletes and what happens and the decision that you made. You mentioned about taking these visits and finding, it almost sounded to me like you're finding a place to call home. What are some of those things that students can do as they're taking these visits and, trying to figure out, is this the right fit for me?
Almost tag that question with what I would tell my younger self if I can go back.
Okay.
10
Yeah,
years,
let's do
right?
it.
It's very interesting that you asked that question, which I think is a really intriguing one in a lot of ways, Sarah, because we learn so much throughout our lifetime, and you're able to see what this current student athlete might be going through, and you've been through it, and you can try to shed some light on what they're probably, almost like being a fortune teller, share with them some things that they'll be able to see. But some of the things that I would probably share today that I wish I had been more thoughtful about at that time was asking more questions, about the student experience, not just athlete experience, asking questions about the opportunities outside of being a student athlete, which I didn't really know at that time. Student Athlete Advisory Committee has become a big thing, but even some of the activities on campus, more importantly, mentorship programs.
Yes.
At that time, those things didn't really exist during my time. We're seeing a lot more of that through the student athlete development space, but the holistic approach in how you develop these young people is on display right now. By the way, we could talk about that thing, the NIL, the name, image, and likeness, but that's a whole other conversation, right? So all these things are in my head now that you want to be able to have kids at least even ask the questions about on the front end and understanding what the experience will be like. Having a chance to not only know your academic counselor, many kids don't know their academic advisor for their major. What it will look like when they choose. It's so crazy. We go through exit interviews here, and I'll ask the student athlete, have you spent any time with your academic advisor? And they're like, who is that? I spent time with my academic counselor, and they have no idea. So these people that you will interact with outside of athletics, I think is so important because that branding started when you signed the National Letter of Intent. So now you become this walking billboard in a lot of ways, no matter who you are.
Right.
And are you spreading the wealth in the sense of sharing with people what you stand for? And a lot of that is tied to folks that you don't see on the regular, on a daily basis, that you want to get to know you, and that becomes a part of your network. So after 4 or 5 years, when you do leave and you're in contact with some of these people because you've built relationships, you don't know what that means when you walk away with a degree. You may have a job before you walk across the stage.
That's right.
So to receive your diploma. So I will point to some of those things about the student experience, the people that you need to get to know outside of the athletic department, the dean of students,
Right.
Again, the academic advisor. I would say that it's very important for you, even in some cases now. I think you need to understand who your president is.
Right.
Why wouldn't a young man be able to walk in and sit down with the coach? It would assume he wouldn't care. But tell me a little bit about the leadership. I think at the end of the day, we're all led by people that we sometimes, when you get to that level, may not get to spend as much time with. But I think asking more thoughtful questions around what the experience will mean outside of the fact that you just get to put the uniform on and play on Saturdays, should always be at top of mind.
Yeah. And I love that you were just talking about like getting to know your academic advisor, getting to know people outside of the athletic department. I think that's really key is when students start to take these visits, they're having conversations with these coaches way before they step on campus. So it's important from a parent's perspective and a student perspective, ask the coach, can you meet with an academic advisor in that college that maybe your student's interested in? What about meeting with a professor that maybe is in that field of study that the student might be interested in? Because these are things that the coaches can help set up on these campus visits, whether it's an unofficial or official visit, because those are the conversations that student can still continue to have when they make that decision.
That's right. And a lot of times I think what happens is they'll get a chance to go through the college and talk with someone that represents it. But again, I think some of the influencers, or more importantly, some of the leadership is probably key. when taking place.
And I think you using the word leadership is so impactful in that as well, because again, the dean of the college, different stakeholders that are part of the academic side, because we both know that academics plays a really big role in staying on campus and continuing to play your sport.
Right. It really does. And I talked about my mom, and, when I was going through all these visits, I'll never forget Coach Bobby Bowden. It's funny, I play for the son, but I'm being heavily recruited by the father at the time. And I'll never forget us sitting down at the dinner table, and my grandfather, who's no longer with us, he was just so excited to see Bobby. And my mom, growing up in Miami, Florida, being a Florida State fan is pretty interesting. So, and a lot of us having the conversation about the athletic experience, and I'll never forget this moment that changed my life and my mindset around what education really is. When my mom, because Bobby Bowden, Coach Bowden, the legend, kept talking about how they see me as an athlete, she literally stopped him in like the middle of a sentence, and she said his first name. It's a true story. She says, "Bobby, you've been talking about," and she may have followed up with Coach, "but you've been talking about athletics for like the last 15, 20 minutes. And I'm really interested in what you have to offer from an academic perspective, because you wouldn't be here if he wasn't a good athlete. I want him to realize that this is really more of an academic scholarship in my mind for the be able to play football." That's a true story. And I'll never forget it. And it changed my mindset of knowing there were two things I was motivated by in that statement. One, I am going to get a college degree no matter what happens.
That's right.
Two, this was a very important part of my life, and more so for my mother. She knew at that time, someone who sacrificed a lot and dropped out of college to take care of me and my younger sister, how important it would be for me to help break a barrier in our family. So those are very emotional thoughts.
Right.
In that moment, that's how I preface what you just talked about. I mean, that this is an important experience, but more so it is life-changing for many of us.
Yeah. And thinking about, student athletes, they're wanting to become collegiate athletes, and and that doesn't necessarily mean playing at the Division I level. A lot of times that is the goal. And, one of the conversations we continue to have on the show is about there's more than just the Power Five that's out there. And when you start to take in, an eagle eye view of the opportunities that happen in collegiate athletics, you are able to see what is available, whether it's not a full academic or athletic scholarship, because I know in your position now, you get to work with some Olympic sports and have learned that we have equivalency sports, which maybe you might only get a few $1,000s, but some of these smaller Division I schools have the ability to give out some more academic aid. So that means this academic conversation actually has to start freshman 10th grade year of high school.
That's right. It does. And what's so interesting is, again, you've got your young man that he will receive the full ride. He'll have a chance to, he will have a chance to have everything paid for. And you got this young woman who's on the track team, who may be in a different circumstance, or a baseball player in a different circumstance based on the number of scholarships that they may have. And I think that's what's so interesting about some of these sports. You've got young people who realize pretty quickly that their academic experience matters, because in some cases, to your point, it will pay for some of the athletic or the college experience. And it's just so important to have that mindset and understand that while this is what I will be a part of, it is definitely not going to be who I'm going to be remembered for.
That's exactly right.
Just because you do understand that we all pull it off. We all have to take the uniform off. Those NCAA commercials about being a student athlete, and the numbers of student athletes that have the chance to play professionally, that is as true as any other commercial you'll see about what it means to be a student athlete as there is. So
yeah, and I love those commercials because it brings so much light of, and I think the phrase that is often used is we all go pro, most of us go pro in something else other than our sport.
That's it.
And you had the chance of playing a little bit at the professional level. I did not. I only played 2 years of college athletics and before I made some transitions. But, and I think that just gives us a point of view of where it could be a year for you, it could be 2 years for you, depending on the circumstances, or you could end up playing for 4 years of college and a few years
Right.
professionally. But in
Right.
the end, at some point, this sport will end.
Right. That's right. It will. It will. And again, you've got to be savvy enough to understand that from the day you get on campus, and this is where I think just because of it, and I talk as if we're really old, but we're not. Generation, this generation is they're different. They're tech savvy. They are more. I think they're more visual than they've ever been, and so I think that those things should help them in turn create the network because of the amount of technology used to network and build relationships with people. On top of the fact, I think they're visual. They want to be out in front. They want to learn, and I think that some of that should be a benefit to them, given how important relationships are and how they're trying to build networks. So I use that as an example to say that I think they have an advantage. They have to continue to I guess what I say, they have to continue to take advantage of it.
That's right. And, we talk a lot about social media as well, of saying, how do you represent yourself and how do you interact with your future coaches, even future administrators? Most of all folks that work in college athletics are on a social media platform. And I've always said this is when I was meeting with a recruit one-on-one, I Googled their social media handles because number one, I wanted to see who they were, what they represented, but it also opened up the door of conversation because you mentioned in the very beginning as, working in college athletics, it's about the end game. And it's about how are these students going to make an impact when they walk away from whatever institution that they're at. And so I want to just ask you from a leadership perspective, what can some students do as they're managing their social media platforms, they're interacting with coaches and leaders at the institution?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I think right now, again, I mentioned name, image, and likeness. And I think in a lot of cases, there are going to be a lot of platforms that institutions are investing in to assist. Your brand is as big as anything else there is about you in this moment, and how you share information with others who potentially may want to invest in you will be extremely important for years to come. I think institutions are being thoughtful again around this student athlete experience. I know one of the things that we've done here is really spent time with our students about build a LinkedIn profile, what that looks like from start to finish, and how you need to interact with others. If you can get someone to write some recommendations on who you are as a individual, a student, an athlete, how people can talk about you. I think the pitfalls of some of this is when you get on social media, for instance, Facebook or Twitter or Insta. I know a lot of young people on Instagram. I don't have an Instagram account, but I think when you see those accounts, there's a lot of information being put out, and the pitfalls of having things out there. Corporations, companies are looking at that you put in your profile or that you tweeted or put on your Instagram page a year ago or 2 years ago, and it impacts the opportunity for you to have this great experience as a professional in a space that you're very passionate about because of materials that you put out, because there's much more of a risk for companies to hire people who may not be as responsible in some cases. And I think you're seeing that. But I do think having conversations with maybe your communication staff.
Oh, that's good.
Build, again, a LinkedIn network, which is a LinkedIn profile, which is something we've done. Again, I mentioned the NIL. It's hard not to because you talked about what institutions are doing. And I think whether it's through influencer, whether it's through Compass, whether it's through Open Doors, these companies are investing in institutions, and institutions are investing in them because they want to help young people build brands. And now how can I monetize my name now off this name, image, and likeness? And I do think at this time there is more opportunity today than there ever will be. Mm-hmm. It's going to be bumpy, because of states passing bills, and I don't know what Congress will do from a national perspective, but that's right. It's going to be a bumpy road. But I do think, again, visiting with the folks on your campus that are tied to communications, media relations, strategic planning, fan engagement, marketing, all those folks are going to have some kind of thought around what kind of content you should be putting out. And by the way, a lot of institutions are hiring content specialists, media, they're allowing people to put out information through all their social media platforms. So I would spend some time with them helping understand what it looks like from top to bottom, not just with LinkedIn, but also on social media outlets.
Yeah. And, for those students who aren't in college yet to have all these resources, these are the conversations that you really want to start having with your family and your friends and, your coaches and the people that are around your high school, simply because that brand that you're building, who you are and what you stand for, starts as soon as you start posting on the social media outlets.
That's right. 100%. It's and as I said already, I just think there's a lot of pitfalls in the way things can be posted. But I think there's also a lot of opportunity if you put it the right way. We've seen kids who the TikTok phenomenon. I just heard the other day there was a young man at Florida A&M with 1 million followers on TikTok. I just heard the other day there's a young woman who's not even a starter on one of Texas's women's Texas women's program. One of the teams, there's a young woman who has like 500,000 Instagram followers, and she's not even a starter, but she understands how to work the space, and she's really good at the technology piece around the social media platform. So again, it's how you build it. That's right. Same way you build it is the same way it can probably crumble. So you got to be thoughtful in how you're doing it and be strategic, and it's the information that you put out daily. So.
And I like that you just said that. It's like the thoughtfulness that goes into it. You could make one bad decision and it could crumble. So having that network, having the team of people that surround you, even starting in high school, but especially moving into your collegiate career, is so, so powerful.
Right.
Yeah. Haven, I have loved this conversation, and just to get a chance to catch up with you and chat. And, because the podcast is called Confessions from the Sidelines, I would love to know, what is your favorite memory of standing on the sidelines?
So I was trying to think through this because there's so many of them, and I'm going to share this story just because it's so near and dear to me and so many of my teammates because of the way it all happened. I'll never forget 1999, a hot day in September. We're over in Baton Rouge, facing the other Tigers, LSU, and it was a warm day. The game started out, we're running out of the tunnel, and you see that Bengal Tiger. It is loud, and I would say into the first quarter we took a lead, and it kept expanding. And you can hear a pin drop, right? We were not ranked. They were ranked 15, 16. They were a ranked team that year, 1999. That was Coach Tuberville's first season. And I was standing on the sideline with many of the guys that I played on the defensive side of the ball with. And we were having this conversation about all the things that were going on because we were up by like 30 points. And we were talking about all the things that were going to happen after the game and all this stuff about, going to visit with fans, going up into the stands, all these things that we were not going to be able to do. So something that I would never have imagined would be able to take place did. So Coach Joe Panunzio, yes, I have to say your name, he comes out of the locker room with boxes of cigars, right? Like we're like 17 and 23-year-olds. Most of us know nothing about cigars other than seeing our uncle or a grandfather or someone smoke them, and we don't know anything about those. And so he starts pulling them out and handing them out to us. Him and other coaches, they've got lighters and we're lighting them. We're standing in Death Valley in the corner of the field smoking cigars. And it was just a surreal moment because I think we all thought, well, this is probably not right, but it feels good because we came in Death Valley, we won the game convincingly, and we had a great moment as a team. And all the guys that I played with, if you bring up a cigar for 1999, they will tell you they remember. And vividly, I remember standing there with my friend and my teammate, Alex Lincoln. You know, we were hugging and talking about the great game that we just had as a defense. And I vividly remember that moment just because, you know, it helps you understand what college sports is all about. Sharing great moments. You feel really good about those that you get to spend time with in a space that you're truly passionate about. Yeah. And that's full circle with me as an administrator. Yep. And so I really appreciated that moment. Now, the moral to that story is while we did that, every member of our team had to pay the compliance staff or office $1 because it was an extra benefit. So they came to the conclusion that the value of the cigar, which I don't think is true, was $1, and we all had to pay it back the next week when we got to campus. So.
Oh, wow. Like, what a story. Oh my gosh. And I just love that like full circle of administration like came back and was like, okay, now you owe us $1. And so when we think about that student athletes, like make sure you're asking the right questions, especially if something like that begins to happen.
That's right.
So, no doubt about it. Haven, thank you so much for being here, having a conversation. I know there's so much value and our listeners are super pumped to hear from you today.
I look forward to doing it again.
Sounds good.